Good morning. This morning's coffee devotional comes out of 2 Chronicles chapter 16. And we see the results. And by the way, enjoy your coffee, get your morning started, or if you're driving, keep your eyes on the highway and just listen. But we see in this morning's devotional, the couple of verses, what happens when we don't turn to God and we turn to someone else. Or to another king. It can be our own self. Our own self wants to be king. In 2 Chronicles 16, verse 7, out of the NLT, we see what happened to Asa. At that time, Hanani the seer came to King Asa and told him, "Because you have put your trust in the king of Aram instead of in the Lord your God, you missed your chance to destroy the army of the king of Aram." Verse 10, Asa became so angry with Hanani for saying this that he threw him into prison and put him in stocks. And at that time, Asa began to oppress some of his people. When we turn to another king other than to God, and we don't rely on God for our source and our strength, but we turn to the world and its influence, religion and its influence, other kings, whatever those kings are, our own self-life in regards to whatever we're facing. When we turn to another king and trust in them rather than turning to God to see what He wants us to do, as a result, we end up throwing people, putting the men of God that God has put into our life around us, we throw them into prison and we lock them up. And because we become frustrated, we're angry. Asa had trusted God earlier. This time he turned to another king. And the world that we live in is confident in its technology, it's confident in its science, medical science, and studies. But you know what? When you trust in man or you trust in them, you miss out, you miss the chance to see what God can do. You can only get what the world says can happen. I want you to think about this morning. Are you going to trust the world and put your confidence in it and in religion? Or are you going to put your trust in God and His Word? See what God wants to do with your debt. See what God wants to do with your business or your job. See what God can do with your sickness or your depression. Rather than fear, see what God can do. See what God can do with your relationship or before you divorce. Have you cried out and sought the Lord to see what He can do? You can miss your chance when you turn to yourself to see what you think you ought to do rather than turning to God and asking Him what He wants you to do. God bless you. Don't miss a chance.